Hey, this is Scott, and I'm going to talk about another Bizmonger product, which is Quote Viewer. Now, earlier in the last presentation, I discussed Quote Builder, which is this app right here. And with Quote Builder, we were able to define a list of services that we provide, and also associate various materials to our service that would ultimately result in the cost of our quote, or the price of our quote. So if you remember, if you looked at the last video, we were able to, within services, specify various services that we were going to provide a quote for, like an oil change, a tune-up. And then we were able to go through a wizard, and if there are any adjustments that we need to make based on our service templates, such as for an oil change, for the materials there's oil, or for a tune-up there's spark plugs, air filter, etc. You make adjustments or remove a material for a specific customer that you're going to generate a quote for. And then within the customer page, we filled out the first name, last name, phone number, email, and the title of our quote, and it would generate a business proposal document. That was Quote Builder. Quote Viewer will actually take those quotes that were previously generated and enable a user to do a couple things. Query a quote, or query quotes for specific customers by customer name. Get a customer sign off to start a job based on that quote. So in other words, receive a signature from a customer that will serve as documentation or authorization to start work. And then also with Quote Viewer, we have the ability to generate an invoice document from our quote document being the source. So specifically, if you notice here, there's various documents per customer. They really come in two forms. With Quote Viewer, there's up to 2 documents that can be displayed per customer. The first document is the actual quote itself. So if we tap on Keith Bryan for the tune-up quote, we see just one document, which is a quote. But there's also another document that can be created, which is an invoice. And this could be created through this Quote Viewer application. In addition to generating an invoice from a quote, we also want to discuss getting customer sign-off or authorizing work. So basically this is, when you drop down the app bar, if you tap to authorize work, this view right here, or this page, is basically a statement for the customer to sign, saying customer name. In this case, our customer is Keith Bryan. All right, same thing on this document right here. Grant Scott Nimrod of, and then whatever the business name is. In our case, Bizmonger. Permission to start work based on quote statement reference number 2. Right. And so the scenario for this is really when a customer accepts your business proposal and they would like you to do work for them, you simply, on your tablet device, hand this quote or hand this page over to the customer for them to sign. In my case, I'm acting like I'm Keith Bryan. Have that for them to sign. You take it back and you just save it. So for legal documentation, what we just did is we just captured the customer signature, which is proof that we have permission to start work, which means that when we generate an invoice for that customer, for them to pay us, and they say, well, I never told you to work on it, well, we have documentation and their signature saying that we do. So if we were to go back to look at what was just done, we have our quote document, and now we have, voila, our customer signature based on the statement. And this, once it's signed, that's it. It's in stone. You can't overwrite it, you can't write over it, you can't erase it, etc. In addition to that, with Quote Viewer, we're also able to, again, generate invoices. So how we do that is we simply, based on the customer, we display the quote document, and then in the app bar on the right bottom corner, we tap Create Invoice. With Create Invoice, all we need to do is specify a due date for our invoice. In other words, the customer needs to pay this invoice by date of, etc. And we'll just put in whatever we want. So in our case, let's say 6/15/2013. Tap Apply Date, and when you tap Apply Date, the date, if valid, will turn green and bold font, meaning that this was accepted as a valid due date. And then we simply drop down the app bar menu and we hit Save. Right? If we notice, we now have, for Keith Bryan, our quote, which we always had, but now our invoice as well, in which our due date 6/15 is right here. If we tap on that, we see up close that this is the invoice that we just generated. So far I discussed capturing the customer sign-off so that you as a professional can begin work, and also being able to generate an invoice once that work is done so that you could bill the customer. There's also another feature on Quote Viewer. That feature is that feature is also doing a customer search. So for example, if I wanted to look up a customer, Luke Skywalker, all right, here we go right here, and we see two documents, the quote and the invoice for Luke. So, and also there is a share charm functionality which exists. For whatever reason, I got to figure out what happened to it. Anyways, so this is Quote Viewer. I demonstrated searching customer quotes, generating an invoice from a quote, and also capturing customer sign-off. In our next demo, we're going to discuss Invoice Viewer, which will enable a user to query invoices just like we did querying in Quote Viewer based on customer name. But in addition to querying invoices for customers, with Invoice Viewer, we also have the ability to manage expenses. So specifically for each invoice within our Invoice Viewer, we're able to just give you a sneak preview. We're able to bring up an invoice and apply whatever expenses we want to it. I don't know. We could say my first expense. Some description. 19, or let's say $199. Alright, what we just did was we just applied our first expense towards the invoice so that, well, we could stay on top of what expenses may be common for different quotes that are now invoices, or when it comes tax time, I don't know, figuring out how to manage or allocate expenses for specific invoices. If we add another one, let's see, my second invoice, $20. All right, that's it. So we'll talk a little bit more about Invoice Viewer in the next video, and we'll also talk about a killer feature, which is past due notifications for Invoice Viewer. So we'll talk about that next in the upcoming video.